Doble honrada a los apóstoles, a los cristianos de Jackson Valley. Un saludo a los escogidos. Now we're done.
So-called coronavirus. Yeah, of course it's one of them. And everybody who awake see it. Yeah, it's not in hiding. It's something that's blatant in your face. You know what I mean? In plain sight. You know, it's not hiding, people. Come on now. People with their eyes know, you can see that this is a new world order right here. It's nothing different. And like I tell you before, it's just gonna get tighter and tighter. Every day come down, it's gonna get tighter. Someday like today or yesterday will be like, well, it's not that tight, but they're gonna step up the numbers. And like I did a podcast earlier on, just to show the people the numbers, all the numbers that basically the total and every country basically, the total amount of so-called virus, person that have the people who have the virus and the people who are dead, and you have to have them all up. But what you go understand that it basically going up for the countries that haven't locked down as yet. You get what I mean? So even though I tell you that every country involved, every single country in the world that at least a case, you understand? It go all the way down to like the Virgin Islands. I got 2 cases, but that's how it is. Bermuda, even Cayman Islands got 3 cases, but that's how it is, people. Every single country gonna play their role, and then, you know, with the numbers keep going up on the people who are not locked down as yet, yeah, they're gonna so-called force them to also lock down to contain the coronavirus. But it's a hoax, people. The whole thing is a sham on the masses, no doubt about it. Yeah, and we go get into it. Basically show you some things from back then. We're getting a few videos and basically, you know, trying to match it up with what's going on right now. You understand? Let's get into this one, guys.
Memories of the pandemic of 1918 loom over the current global battle against the coronavirus. And though it's too soon to say how comparable the current outbreak will be, there are lessons to be learned from that earlier time, as we hear from Martha Teichner.
The outbreak is growing. More deaths, more cases as thousands of Americans begin to self-quarantine.
You hear that, people? This is how they do you right here. It's not something that you see, but something that you heard of. It's time for you to change your way of thinking, people. What I say, change your way of thinking. You hear, you see nothing. You don't see nothing going on where people suffering from this so-called virus. They just tell you on the news, and all you can do is just buy it and run. Of course, change your way of thinking. That's what you need to do.
If the outbreak of COVID-19 has a bullseye in the U.S., it's Washington State.
And there you go. Every single news people show you the same footage. Why they do that? This is the third live I done did with these so-called news companies, different news companies, and every one of them show you the same scene right here, people. Am I lying? Wow, this is unbelievable. All these different news stations, they show the same footage just to convince the masses of a pandemic.
So those cases are linked to a nursing home outside Seattle.
Schools and universities closed. A gauge of alarm here.
Washington State's death toll continues to rise.
Seen in Seattle.
This is how they're gonna lock down the world, by keep showing you this right here with people with the mask on. And I tell you already, people, you're breathing, you're sucking in air. What you think this gonna do for you? As far as the weakest link is right there where the rubber band connect. You understand? That's where the air gonna come from when you suck in the air. You see where your eyes at? Right there where your eyes at, you notice there's a hole. When you breathe, the first place the air run to is not to the front and gonna so-called filter off. It's to the eyes, right where the eyes at. You're gonna go right to that seam and get in there. You understand? You're not doing nothing but covering up your damn nose. That's all you're doing. It's bullshit.
A lot of masks, but not for the...
I'm not lying, people. Every time I see somebody in the mask, they look dumb to me. They look like one of them that got brainwashed by the dumb government system That's all I see them as when I see them.
First time. Substitute Spanish flu for coronavirus. 1918 for 20.
People. It's nothing different. It's the same fucking shit. Everybody dumbed down to the core, wearing masks. They look stupid, people. What's wrong? This was a fashion back in the day. They just use the mask as a damn style, a fashion to show the masses that they have a pandemic. They need to cover up. They need to hide. Same damn shit they get.
Coronavirus. 1918 for 2020. And just look. Seattle seized by the Godzilla of modern pandemics. The 1918 flu killed 675,000 Americans.
675,000 Americans, as you can see, the big old cross sitting right there, people. They are part of it, the Red Cross. There you go, people. What you need to see again? You see them in front of this bullshit right here that's going on from back in the days, and also right now, this is bullshit they got for the masses. And just like now, you can't prove these fucking fake deaths. It's the same thing. Nobody could prove those deaths. They just fake the masses and give you some news footage.
50 to 100 million people died worldwide.
50 to 100 million people died. You believe it? Wow, it's nothing but a hoax. 100%.
That's equivalent to 225 to 450 million people today. Most the numbers are staggering.
John Barry wrote a history of the 1918 flu.
These are the people making money off you with this fake shit. They're never gonna stop people. And I told you, the influenza now they just describe just a normal like flu. You understand? Normal flu-like symptoms they call influenza. Back in the days, that was the fucking outbreak. You understand? Just like I told you about the coronavirus, known as a damn common flu, common cold. That's all it is. The common cold meaning is a fancy word they use at coronavirus to describe the fucking common cold. And later on, bam, they tell you it's a disease that's killing everybody. Same thing with that influenza. That was the weapon they used back then.
On the adjunct faculty of Tulane University.
There was a mild spring wave that was hit or miss. It came back in the fall with more than a vengeance.
You see these people? You see what they got right here? Hold on, watch this right here.
It came back.
You see this right here? Do you believe this shit right here, people? You need to wake your ass up. They're making tents. And it's the same thing they tell you right now they're doing. Using soccer fields to put hospital beds, and you can't see it nowhere. You hear me? You can't see it nowhere. And there's something else that shocked me. They were so-called talking about the test sites where you have to go to get tested, and you believe that the TV tell you that is secret. I couldn't believe it. They're showing you a side on TV and say, yeah, and show you a crowd of people lining up. And then they go tell you that it's undisclosed. They can't tell you where the site is. You have to call into some people and talk to them, and then you and them reason some kind of doctor. Then they're gonna convince you if you should go or not to go get the test. What kind of shit is that, people? And then have your identification, your whole belly, to show them when you go to get the test. It's a fake shit, 100% in.
All with more than a vengeance. Probably 60 to 70% of the deaths actually occurred in an incredibly short time of probably about.
You hear that, people? All the deaths, basically, most of the deaths just happened in an incredible fast time, just like how the virus just rise up, people. Last couple of weeks, they tell you it's a couple of Americans average like 16, and all of a sudden it's 6,000. That's how they do it. They're full of shit on the masses.
15 weeks from late September 1918 until, through December, maybe a little into January.
In that time, during the final months of World War I.
It's just a trick for the masses. It's not real. The same way they're running this off right here on the people, and we can see it, is the same way they're running on those dumb people back here.
More soldiers died of the flu than were killed on the battlefield during 4 years of fighting.
I already told you that's why they use that. It's easier to convince masses of a pandemic when it's damn disease. You understand? Not war. The war, they can never tell you kill that much people, because they're only using soldiers to war, and most of the time they're not going to tell you that citizen. our so-called
Quizá en esta parte
regular
del
people
mundo,
get
en
involved in it. You
este
understand?
hemisferio,
This is what they have to use to
no
shut down the
haya-
whole wide world. It's a world
no haya
scare,
guerra.
people. No doubt about it.
Pero en
And
la
this
otra parte
show
del
you
mundo,
that they did it before.
en
And
Siria
they're the
hay
one
una
who's
guerra
showing you
civil.
right now to let you know that yes, it happened before and it
En
will
Afganistán,
happen
en todos
again.
esos
That's how it is.
As opposed to the coronavirus, the most vulnerable were in their 20s.
Most
Imagínese
horrific.
que
See the
usted
difference?
vaya de que
The most
usted se
vulnerable back
levante
then
para
was
ir a
in their
trabajar un
20s.
día
Now
y
they're
lo
telling you
exploten.
these people in
Así como
about
si nada.
60. You see what I'm
Porque
saying?
tú estás
That's
pasando
how
por
they
una
do
zona de
it, people.
guerra.
They're full of shit. All flu-like
Así-
symptoms
esa es la
like
realidad
supposed to
de la
kill
vida
more
de
like
mucha
older
gente en
people
esa parte del
with
mundo.
complications. That's just how it is.
Symptoms really
Ahora Israel
bleed
está
not only from your nose and mouth, but from your eyes and ears. People were turning so dark blue from lack of oxygen. In the book, I quote one doctor writing a colleague saying that he could not
Ellos no se
tell
están bebiendo el vino de
Reading off
Babilonia.
a script, people, take a look at his eyes and take a look at the person who do the interview with the shoulders all up. Yes, like it worried, more it here, it feels scared. Of course, it's
white soldiers, African American soldiers.
It was called the Spanish
There you
flu.
go.
El vino de
Spanish flu,
Babilonia
just to mock the
es
damn
simbólico
people.
para-
There you
That
go.
was only because Spain, which was
Para,
not
las-
at war, allowed the press to report
estilo
on
de
it
vida
openly,
de-
unlike here. The
Bullshit.
first serious outbreak
estilo
in
de
the
vida
United
de-
States
de-
began
Why
at
would all these
de,
people right
de
here
este mundo
put on
satánico,
spot
de
open
esta
up
parte del
like this
mundo, de la
and
peste
they all got the virus?
y
You
la
believe
ramera
it?
y
It's
Babilonia,
bull
que
crap
eso es
for the
Estados
masses.
Unidos.
You believe this right here? Wow, who gonna be in this kind of environment?
Entonces
keeping
ellos no
these
quieren
people
beberse
around
del
with
vino
just
de
a hope for the
Babilonia,
dumb
que es la
Camp
masses.
Funston,
democracia
now Fort Riley in
y ese
Kansas,
estilo de vida.
as infected soldiers from across the country made their way to the trenches.
Israel
The virus spread.
ahora está
But the
antagonizando
nation
ese país
wasn't.
War is just
para
propaganda
que
and
los
hope.
Estados Unidos se
They
involucren.
run at the
Israel, mira,
masses.
Israel
Don't
es
be
como...
surprised when they tell you that something broke out in the
Yo estoy hablando
war.
de
They're full
Israel, el
of
país,
shit.
no la nación, porque
A year
son dos
earlier,
cosas
President
distintas.
Woodrow Wilson had rammed through Congress the
Nosotros somos Israel, la
Sedition
nación.
Act, making it a
Allá,
crime
yo estoy
to
hablando
say
de
or
Israel, el
publish
país, allá.
anything negative that would affect the war effort.
Wilson
You hear that, people?
Israel, el
It's
país.
from, I told you, man, nothing new under this dome right here, people.
Ellos son como-
They do the same thing from back in the day.
Como un
Suppress the
chamaquito que
people.
tiene un hermano,
Basically, that's what they're telling you.
un hermano
They're
grande que
doing
siempre
that
lo
shit
defiende.
today. Just like they used to do it back in the days.
Y como él
But
sabe
people
que
spreading
tiene
lies.
ese
Them
hermano
is the
grande de
liars.
Estados Unidos que siempre lo
Fucking news
defiende.
company.
Él se pone de
created what was
frente
called
con
the
todo el
Committee
mundo.
for
Se
Public
pone- Él
Information.
se pasa.
The architect of that
Habla
committee
disparate.
said,
You read your script.
Y se
truth
pone a
and
antagonizar
falsehood
a los
are
otros
arbitrary terms.
chamaquitos en la
The force of
escuela.
an idea lies in its inspirational value.
Porque
It
sabe
matters
que-
very
que-
little
que-
if it is true or false.
Si
Was
los
that a
otros chamaquitos se
license
tratan de
to
pelear con
lie
él,
to the American public?
Israel
was
decía, yo
precisely
voy a llamar a mi
All
hermano
of them
grande.
got the license to lie to the
Así
people,
que es-
including these punks that you see on
Es el
screen.
ejemplo de
That's
cómo
why
se
they get the
comporta
airtime.
Israel el país.
You
hoy en
understand? The
día.
TV is about deception. If you're not a deceptionist,
Y ellos
they're
van a
not
traer
putting
a
you
los
on
Estados
there.
Unidos
Simple
a
as
una
that.
maldita
In
guerra.
the United States, you had national public health leaders saying such things as, quote, this is ordinary influenza by another name, unquote.
There you go. There
At
you
the
go.
local level, the same kind of thing was occurring.
With deadly fear, which went ahead with a huge war bond parade in the fall of 1918, when the virus was at its most virulent. Newspapers killed stories, quoting the medical community saying, don't do it.
So 48 hours later, influenza exploded around the city.
You hear that, people? Because the people go ahead with that so-called protest.
Así
The
pues,
disease
oigan la
explode around the city. You
decisión que
believe
Yahweh
that?
ha
It's
tomado
government people was
sobre
doing the protest in the first place. That's what you need to know. All fakers and the masses. In all those so-called tragedy, you know, they put on it. You understand? They put it on for the dumb masses. It's just a show. They're dancing around on the world stage. All of them, you know,
The result is it's one of the hardest hit cities in the world. And the mass graves being done by the state.
han de llevar
Grave.
arrastran
There you go.
las,
This
las
is what I'm going
crías
to show you
de
about
los
mass
rebaños.
graves. Where's the
Gastarán
graves? You
sobre
see
ellos
people with shovels
sus
holding
pastizales.
down their head. Where's the graves? This is just dumb shit for the masses. 100%. But they can use this
Eso está
faggy
hablando
shit
de
right here,
que-
Charlie Chaplin shit, and fool the dumb masses. Bam on.
Israel-
Shovels and so forth.
And how many people died?
Va
About
a traer a los Estados
14,500 in
Unidos
Philadelphia.
Bullshit.
Compare
con
the
sus
signs
acciones.
that
Ellos
went
van
up then.
jugando ajedrez.
Notice that
Ellos van a obligar
Compare the signs that went up then to now.
Irán mueva sus
Notice
piezas para
handwashing
atacar
wasn't
a la
mentioned.
pieza de
Americans could
a la
see for
pieza
themselves
de
in
Israel, el
spite
país,
of what they were
para que después
Wow, I told you,
la
man.
reina en Estados
And the
Unidos
dummies, you can see them in plain
sea obligada a
sight. They
defender
can't hide people. As soon as the
la
government
pieza de
run
Israel.
a psyop, you see it on them. It shows. You see this shit right
Entonces
here.
la
It
pieza
show up
en
on
ese
them
juego de
people.
ajedrez
That's how you
en
know the
Babilonia
dummies
se va a
of
ver,
this
los
world.
Estados
I'm
Unidos
not
se va a ver
lying.
obligado a
Oh,
defender a
they
Israel
thought they were less
y va a
likely to
entrar
catch
a la
the
tercera guerra
flu.
mundial.
That's right here, people. What is this?
Ese
The
versículo está
barber, you
hablando de la
cutting the
tercera guerra
hair and you
mundial
got the mask on. It's
que,
nothing but
que va a
bullshit.
empezar pronto en la
Are you
tierra.
kidding me? If this man right here, so-called,
Yo estoy loco
got
porque
the
empiece,
virus
porque la
and he
tercera
all
guerra
up in his
mundial
ear, what gonna happen?
va a
I
suceder
guess he good
mayormente
once he
allá
inbreeding, right?
en-
It's dumb shit for the
en
dumb
Israel,
man.
Outside, they
Irán
did
y en
whatever
esos
they
países.
could, given what they didn't
Y la
know.
tercera guerra
Back
mundial
in
va a ser una
1918,
buena
they had no
distracción
idea what it was that they
para
were
Esaú.
suffering from and what it was that they were being killed by. And to me, that's the most frightening aspect of the 1918 epidemic.
Dr. Jeremy Brown is Director of Emergency Care Research
Va a ser una
at
buena
the National
distracción porque ellos van a
Institutes of
estar
Health,
distraídos
but spoke to us in a
y
personal capacity.
no van a tener toda su
Viruses will not be
atención allá
discovered for another
que
15 or
como van a
20 years.
suceder cosas aquí
That's
en esta
very
parte
different
del
to
mundo
today. We know what it is
que
that,
ellos no van a
that
poder
is causing the
controlar.
disease.
Brown has written
It's just
extensively.
a news tragedy. Just
Si
go
van a,
ahead
y
and
si van a
tell the
haber
masses
millones de personas
what
de
the fuck
israelitas
happened. That's all it is. Just tell the
que
masses
Yahweh va a
that
enseñar
y'all
a
faking them. That's all it is. Watch this
va a
right here,
redimir
people. Pay
cuando él
attention.
vuelva.
Extensively about influenza and argues that
Eso
2020
significa
will
que
not be another
hay mucha
1918
gente que no va a
thanks to
recibir la
advances
marca a la
in
vez
science.
Back in 1918,
Advancing science.
que viene
What
siendo
is
el
science
chip, el
so-called
microchip.
claim to do right now in this pandemic? What is they doing, people? They're searching for the vaccine.
Hay muchos de ustedes que
Wow,
dicen que
in a world of
yo
hurt,
no,
if
yo no
you
voy a
think
meter
they're
eso.
looking
Mira,
to help you. I
Yahweh
told you,
va a
if the
enseñar a usar
disease
es
is
quien
out there
dirige
for real,
tus pasos.
they would never tell you and hide you. You'll be dead.
the basic treatments that were offered were enemas,
libre albedrío.
whiskey,
Aquí dice-
and bloodletting. Our hospitals, as we know them today, were quite different. There were no intensive care doctors who really understand how to treat the very sickest patients. There were no antibiotics to treat
Que no
any.
depende del hombre su camino.
That's the reason why you're
El que
bringing
anda
these
no
stuff.
decide la rectitud de
That's the
sus pasos.
reason why we got antibiotics today,
El hombre no
because
tiene
of
libre
this
albedrío.
breakout.
Yahweh va a enseñar a
Tell us all the
usar.
damn laws that you put in place
Yahweh va a enseñar a
and all the
usar,
shit that you
decide dónde tú vas.
implemented right because of this shit right
Tú
here.
puedes
A
decidir
fake pandemic.
Secondary
Porque tú te vas a
infection.
poner
It
ese
was a
día.
very, very different time and a very different way of practicing medicine back then.
But for John Barry, there is a takeaway from then
Los
that
zapatos que tú te
still
vas a poner ese día.
applies.
The biggest lesson from the
Tú
1918
puedes decidir tomar
pandemic
una
is
calle,
clearly to
caminar
tell
por
the
una
truth.
calle para
What
llegar
are
al
the
trabajo.
consequences?
Wow.
Una
Is to
calle por la
tell
que
the
tú nunca
truth, people.
pasas.
You believe that? Look at these
Pero
fakers
como
right
quiera,
here
tú
on
estás
screen and
destinado
you
a ir al
believe that
trabajo
they're
ese
telling
día.
truth.
Yahweh va a enseñar
They
a
should have
usar.
never used that word. Let's
Mira,
listen the final word.
de
Mhm.
punto
Truth
A
isn't
a
told.
punto B,
I think more people will die, yeah.
Yahweh va a enseñar a usar y
Truth
decide.
hasn't told,
Él
and more
decide
people
eso.
gonna die. You believe
Ahora,
that?
de la
Already
manera
told you
de
it's a
que tú
fake
llegas al
virus.
punto A a
All of
punto
them
B, tú
faking the
puedes,
masses. Let's go back. Let's go.
Tonight, we begin a special series about the threat from influenza. Every year, the seasonal flu emerges and kills tens of thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands globally. But there's an even graver concern. Public health officials fear the emergence of a new, previously unknown flu virus that could be far more lethal.
Just in case you don't, people, this is 10 years ago,
Hay películas
right here.
donde
Pay
los actores se
attention.
ponen
Become a
a
pandemic
cruzar
by
líneas.
spreading across the world.
Y el director
As
lo
William
permite.
Brangham reports,
No
it's
está en el
happened
guión,
before.
pero el director
Heart and
lo
The heart
permite.
in my heartbeat, yeah, because of course I didn't have a beating heart for a little bit.
6 years ago, Autumn
Lo
Redinger
que tiene
started
que pasar en-
6 years ago. Tie and dye shirt.
lo que tiene que pasar en esa
Yes, of course.
escena
Caught it.
feeling sick,
va a
but
suceder
she
como
was a
quiera.
33-year-old mom,
Porque
really
eso,
healthy.
el actor no puede cambiar eso.
Right on the money.
Eso
Of
está en el
course, you know
guión.
it's trash.
So she didn't think much of it.
It was 2 days after Christmas,
Es el
and
director
I
de
just
esta
kind of felt a
película.
little junky, a little cough here and there, but nothing horrible. I had texted my fiance, and it was a big jumbled mess, and that's when he pretty
The
much...
words you texted
Yes,
didn't make sense.
they didn't make sense. Honestly, I don't even remember him coming to pick me up.
Redinger was rushed to her local hospital in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where doctors diagnosed her with the flu.
My lungs started to fill on fire.
Meaning when you would breathe in, it would burn.
Breathe in, breathe out, it burned.
The flu was attacking her lungs.
Haitianos, que nosotros somos los verdaderos israelitas de sangre.
It's easy for the masses to wake up, man, because I told you, if they tell you a story and don't
Nosotros somos
show
los
you
verdaderos
shit, it's better
descendientes
for them.
físicos de
But
Jacob.
when they show you this right here, it show you that it is
Que
a
nosotros somos los
fucking
verdaderos
fake shit.
israelitas.
That's all you need to know. Don't bother to even check if something gonna bust it, because it was fake. Nobody do this. Just
La
remember I
maldita
tell
gente
you,
que están en
nobody
Israel
does
hoy no
this.
son,
It's fake shit.
ellos no son los
For
verdaderos
TV,
israelitas, ellos
that's the
son
only reason why they
unos
do it.
malditos
So they
impostores.
could fit it in the nose to dumb down the damn
and
man.
filling them with fluid.
Hay muchos de ellos que
She
no
was then
saben.
medevaced to University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, where she was eventually put under the care of Dr. Holt Murray.
The lungs become very boggy, they fill with water, and you're not able to move oxygen from the
Ellos se
outside world
criaron
into
con
your
esa
bloodstream.
mentira.
You can't breathe.
You can't breathe. Yeah.
Y
It
dicen
kept getting worse.
Apocalipsis 3.
Her lungs were failing. She was put on a ventilator, but even that couldn't get enough oxygen into her.
It was a nurse who slipped up and made a comment about me dying. And I was just like, what?
Bullshit, people. It's 100% bullshit. And all this time you're up and running, or somebody mentioned about dying. Bullshit. Get out.
Yeah, you died like twice.
Bullshit.
You were on a machine to keep you alive. And I'm like,
That machine, called an ECMO, took out her dark, depleted blood, pumped it full of oxygen, and fed it back into her body.
But when it comes to the fucking elite, they never use back their own blood. They're just giving you a secret or they do it, so that's how they do it. Fooling the damn masses with the fake
Goes
stuff.
through the pump in the oxygenator and comes
Mira
out
que te
your
voy a entregar al
That is
puro de
a
la
very
sinagoga de
intensive
Satanás.
intervention to try to
De
save
los que
someone's
se
life.
proclaman
It's
judíos
as
y no lo son.
intensive as it gets.
Sino
We're
que
taking
mienten.
5 liters of blood a minute,
Yo haré que
taking it
vayan
out of the body
a postrarse.
and returning it. It went
Delante de tus pies.
up.
Days like that
Para
are
que
what
sepan
keep
que yo
Dr.
te he
Anthony
amado.
Fauci up at night.
In
Para que el mundo
2017-18,
sepan
we had the
que
worst seasonal flu that
nosotros
we've
somos
had
los
in memory,
verdaderos
with about
israelitas.
80,000 deaths and almost 1 million hospitalizations. You
Ellos
do
vendrán
that
a nuestros
every
pies, se
year
van a
for
arrodillar,
20,
van a
30, 40
besar.
years.
It's a huge
At the end of that
nuestros
time, it's a
zapatos, nuestra
huge
boca.
toll in illness and in deaths.
Ellos van a-
Fauci is the
ellos van a
director
besar
of the
la-
National
nuestra
Institute of
chancleta.
Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health. He says while many take the so-called
y hay
seasonal
cristianos
flu
que-
for granted,
hay
it still
cristianos que
kills tens
sufren
of
de-
thousands in the U.S. every year.
de síndrome.
They kill tens of thousands of people in the
Hay
US
cristianos
every
que
year.
sufren de
But
síndrome
still
de
they have a
Estocolmo.
vaccine for it. You understand that?
Porque
What I tell you
Satanás lo
people,
tiene de
that show
rehén.
you that the coronavirus is a hoax. Look at what the regular
Y
flu
ahora
do,
ellos están
and
simpatizando
nobody
con
shut down
Satanás.
shit for it. What's wrong,
Ellos
people? That
simpatizan,
don't tell you
ellos
something?
simpatizan tanto con Satanás
Wow.
que,
Wow,
que
I
ellos
mean,
creen
every year,
que esta gente son los
you kill
verdaderos.
over
Ellos no son los
5,000
verdaderos
people and
israelitas.
more. And you tell me that you
Ellos,
never
ellos
do
no cumplen
nothing
la
to
profecía.
so-called solve that problem, and all of a sudden this coronavirus right
Israel
here.
cuando
Get out of here, people. This
cuando
is a
vuelva
hoax
So
right
a
here.
la
this
tierra,
is the
cuando la
influenza
nación de
virus.
Israel vuelva a la
This is the
tierra de
inner core of the
Israel,
influenza virus.
vamos a vivir en
People,
paz.
it's a round ball.
Y esa gente
Like I
no están
don't
viviendo
tell
en
you.
paz.
The same thing they show you in a so-called cartoon farm and tell you it's
Esa
a
gente viven,
coronavirus. You believe
viven con
them?
un terror de que lo
Everything
exploten
is
en
a
cualquier
round
momento.
ball. Just like the earth and every fucking
The seasonal flu isn't really what Fauci loses sleep over. It's the concern that a new flu strain emerges, a virus we've never seen before and have no protections against, like what happened in 1918.
In 1918, we were swimming in the dark,
Por eso
as
que
it were.
ellos hicieron.
That year, a new virus emerged,
Mira,
triggering one of
si ellos son los verdaderos israelitas,
And I
¿por
show
qué?
you
¿Por qué
the same
construyeron un
footage.
muro alrededor
Just
de
like I show you
Jerusalén?
with the news now, they show you the
Yo no
same
sé si ustedes han
fucking
visto
footage. They
ese
have some
muro
footage,
grandísimo
all to convince the masses. That's it. Some photos
que ha
that
salido
they're
en
gonna
una
flash for
película,
your subconscious mind, and boom,
en
you
la
believe
película
in
de
it.
zombie de la Guerra Mundial
Bullshit. All
Z,
fake fucking photos.
donde los
Staged for
zombies
the
The
masses.
worst
calaron el muro.
pandemics in human history,
Hay un
often
muro
called the Spanish flu,
grandísimo alrededor
this
de
virus
Jerusalén
killed at least 50 million
para que
people
ellos se puedan
worldwide
proteger
and
de lo
reached
parecido.
almost every nation on earth.
¿Por qué?
Every
Ellos no son los
nation
verdaderos
on
israelitas.
earth is bullcrap.
¿Cuántas veces que decírselo?
That's how they do the pandemic and the masses.
675,000 people died in the U.S. alone.
So you had this disease that was spread very quickly across the world, that was killing millions of people, and yet people didn't know what it was that was killing them.
Dr. Jeremy Brown directs the Office of Emergency Care Research at the National Institutes of Health. He wrote the book Influenza, the 100-Year Hunt to Cure the...
And this right here, the so-called influenza. And I told you people, it's not an accident. Why they pull this off back in the days, and now they're pulling off the coronavirus. It's the same damn shit. They're playing rotation. That's what they do. They can't help themselves.
In 1918, a new and unusually deadly influenza virus swept the globe in a pandemic that we are still studying today.
The 1918 pandemic caused the global deaths of probably 50 and maybe up to 100 million people.
They don't really have a number for you, 50 to 100 million. How the fuck you get that mixed up? That's bullshit, people. You understand? 50 to 100 million. That don't make no sense. How you last count is crap.
The worst natural disaster in all of recorded human history.
But what made the pandemic so lethal? NIAID's Dr. Jeffrey Taubenberger has been studying the 1918 flu for decades.
Most people who had influenza in 1918 had a completely typical course of influenza, like you would see today. But in 1918,
and you're getting the water from this right here. Where you think the water coming from? You believe it's a virus going around killing everybody. You think you can drink that shit coming out of the pipe?
Y esa gente en Israel, ellos viven inquietos.
In 18, a really unusually high number of people ended up having very severe illness, meaning that they actually developed a pneumonia, an infection of their lungs, that started out as a viral pneumonia and then rapidly progressed in most cases to a secondary bacterial pneumonia. They had no way to treat the viral infection, they had no way to treat the secondary bacterial infection, so these people were just really left in a sense to suffer. And this process,
like they can't treat the so-called virus that they got right now, people, the same way. They tell you they can't treat it or do nothing to it. Yes, and why America only have 400 deaths out of 35,000 cases? That don't make no sense. They're treating it. Why nobody dying? It's bullshit.
From initial onset of infection to death by bacterial pneumonias usually took around 10 or 11 days.
Ordinarily, influenza is most deadly in the very young and the very old. But as Dr.
Very young and the very old. Yes, first they tell you about this coronavirus.
Yo no estoy aquí pasando canata, yo estoy haciendo esto gratis. Si me dan donaciones o no, no me importa. Yo lo hago sin que me den o que no me den. Yo estoy aquí para decir lo que está pasando y lo que va a pasar.
The deaths in all those age groups were more than they had been in other pandemics that we had seen, and that there was a very high rate of death in people between the ages of 20 and 40, which had never been seen before, which had never been seen since.
To find out why the virus was so lethal, Dr. Taubenberger and other scientists retrieved samples of lung tissue preserved in paraffin from soldiers that had died of the flu. Eventually,
always running psyop with the soldiers because they are guinea pigs. They don't have no job, they're just guinea pigs. That's why the government pull them out to become guinea pigs and the masses. Right?
With the help of tissue recovered from frozen bodies in Alaska, Dr. Taubenberger's team was able to reconstruct the 1918 flu virus.
Unfortunately, when you look at the genome,
reconstruct the flu virus. Do you believe that? I already told you people, it's nothing but perception you get on TV. They're faking the masses. What you're doing reconstructing a damn deadly virus. Wow.
Of the virus, and you just compare it on paper to other influenza viruses, nothing obvious really pops out at you as to why they behave this way. And yet we know that this virus is a really virulent pathogenic virus. One of the things the 1918 virus did, it does in experimental animal models, and there's data to say that it's what happened in people.
Animal models, because all of these so-called viruses that complicate the human being, bring them to their death, is come from animals. Wow.
El extranjero que está viviendo en Asdod, en Israel.
You have to go so deep in an animal. You have to get to the blood and urine for you to contract the disease from them. But the human being transfer the disease to another human being by just touching a
Los edomitas de la tribu de Amalek.
You believe that?
Unos malditos cobardes.
The whole thing.
Que ellos son
There's
hombres.
a really strong and very unusual kind of inflammatory response. So that the body's response, the immune response to the virus itself, contributed heavily to lung damage and pathology. Probably contributed to serious illness and death. So it's this very unusual inflammatory response that's one of the key active research focuses of my laboratory to understand why the 1918 virus induced that, and what perhaps we could do in the future to try to develop drugs that might target or limit aspects of the inflammatory response as a way of treating severe viral infections.
More and more medication for the masses. That's what they got. No cure,
Ya,
just
pásenme a usar,
treatment,
lo voy a destruir
more
todito. Ellos se
medication.
van a quemar
That's all they got.
después de
And I
1000
told you,
años.
they're coming with the vaccine. Let's continue.
Cuando pasen
Similar
2000
virulence to
años
the
en el reino de
devastating
Yahushai, ellos se van a quemar todito.
To investigate the potential financial impact of a global pandemic, AIR leveraged its global pandemic model to simulate a hypothetical pandemic scenario. The one we
Yeah, but what you have to understand, people, it is coming. It is coming. With this, that is stop everything that's moving.
Díaz, capítulo
The
1.
economy gonna crash, as you know it. It's gonna crash,
Versículo
people.
10.
That's how they're gonna bring in the new world order. That's how they're gonna do it. One
Por la
world
violencia
connection.
chose has a similar virulence to the devastating pandemic of 1918, with a return period between 100 and 200 years. The map you'll see shows the progression of the event, including the number of mortalities in
Por
each
la
country.
violencia del
The
hombre
pandemic
blanco
begins
contra
in
el hombre
Mongolia
negro,
and spreads
contra el
rapidly to other
israelita
countries,
negro,
including
contra el
People,
israelita
Mongola.
indio.
This is the one that create the disease. I'll come up with it wherever they go
cubrirá la
tell you it come
vergüenza.
from an animal or a bat or whatever. But Mongola, just like they give you with the Wuhan, China.
Te cubrirá
and
la
spread
vergüenza y
rapidly.
serás aniquilado
Just
para
remember that
siempre.
word, people, rapidly, because it is a hoax. Just word of mouth. That's the only fucking way it can spread that fast. If it's just a
Ya,
word of
pásenme a
mouth
usar,
lie.
va a
Russia, China,
a todos los
Korea,
sodomitas.
Armenia, Germany, Japan, Hong
De la
Kong,
tierra.
Tajikistan, and the Ukraine.
A todos,
Travel
a todos,
restrictions and
a todos
quarantine
los hombres
measures take
blancos, menos
effect
los
in the
israelitas que
originating
sean
country by
blancos.
the end of the second.
Bam. You hear
Pero
that
los
people
israelitas
from
blancos
back
como
in the
Blake
days
Griffin
travel
y su
ban
hijo
and also
y los puertorriqueños,
quarantine
que muchos son
right
israelitas
there.
blancos.
They do it, people.
Pero la
Travel
mayoría,
restriction and the
Yahushai va a
masses, the
destruir
same thing
a la
that
mayoría de
you're
los
getting
hombres
now.
blancos.
It's not an accident, people.
Porque
Like
ellos
I
son
said,
malos.
nothing new under
Ellos
the
son
dawn.
los hombres
They're doing
los
it
peores
again
de
in
la tierra.
rotation, holding everybody to ransom. And I already told you, they can't basically house everybody. So that's why they tell you you're on house arrest. It sound fancy when they use the word quarantine. It's called house arrest. It don't matter how pretty you let it sound. It's house arrest right there.
However, these actions are not effective in preventing the rapid spread of the pandemic. The World Health Organization declares a pandemic phase 6 in the fourth month.
Phase 6.
Yo le
All
tengo un
coding.
odio.
I told you they
Yo tengo
do it,
un
people.
odio a los
The wicked
sodomitas.
people behind the wheel running
Estoy
this
loco
earth.
porque
Indicating
llegue
a global
Yahushai
pandemic.
pa yo
Vaccines
tener
begin to
mi
come
piel
online
sobre el
only in
cuello
the sixth month.
de un maldito hombre blanco.
Months, babe. That's what I told you. What I tell you, people. I tell you, don't let them tell you about, oh, we have to 18 months or 2 years, a year and a half to come up with it. No.
Yo estoy loco porque llegue Yahushai
6 months.
para
As
que
soon
podamos
as the
met-
fucking
para
smoke
que
clear,
podamos meter
here they
este
come
maldito
with the
diablo
damn
en cadena.
vaccine to save the day. That's how they do it, people. And the vaccine
Para que sea-
is the real virus
para que
that's
sea
gonna
el
kill
turno
your
del hombre
ass.
blanco
I'm
entrar
not
en la
lying.
esclavitud.
There's no virus out there. So anything they're gonna give you is the real poison. Just dumb out.
First batches are reserved for high-risk individuals, such as those with underlying medical conditions, children, and healthcare workers who are generally
For the older folks, that's what they're doing. Killing off the damn knowledge real fast before it can get down to the
Apocalipsis
younger
13,
ones.
versículo
They're
10.
gonna grow up dumb as a box of rocks.
El
That's
que
what
lleva en
they said.
considered to play a
cautividad
crucial role in the
va en
spreading of
cautividad.
influenza.
El que
The
a cuchillo
efficacy of
mataré
the
es
vaccine,
necesario que
which
a
varies
cuchillo
by
sea
patient
muerto.
age, ranges
Aquí
between
está la
40 and
paciencia y la fe de
60%,
los
which
santos.
means that the vaccine works for only about half
Eso
of those
significa
people who receive it.
que Esaú,
Vaccine work for just half of the
Esaú,
amount
la
of
mayoría de
people
los hombres
who
blancos, no todos los
receive it.
hombres
It's
blancos son
bullshit.
edomitas.
It work for what the
Porque hay
government
muchos
actually
dominicanos que
giving
son
you
blancos,
for.
pero
Break
son
down your
israelitas.
damn body.
Yo estoy hablando de los
Complications,
edomitas,
put
de los blancos que
medication.
descienden de
That's
Esaú.
what it is, no doubt
The
about it.
pandemic
Que más del
continues to sweep across the
90%
world.
de los
Although cases are
edomitas,
reported in all
de los
age
hombres
groups,
blancos
the very
son
young
edomitas.
and very old experience the most severe
El
infections.
10% de los hombres
As is
blancos
common with pandemic
que no son
mortality,
edomitas
the
son
virus
israelitas.
impacts a disproportionate
O-
number of
o de
people
las otras
under age
naciones.
65. The R0
A ellos no le aplica.
But now
Pero
it's
cuando
more gonna
cuando llegue
affect
Yahushai,
over
Yahushai,
65.
él va a
Just
meter
bullshit for
al
the
hombre
masses.
blanco
The
en
value for this
cautiverio
pandemic,
porque
a measure of
tiene que
how many new
cumplirse,
victims a disease carrier is
tiene
likely
que
to
cumplirse la
infect, is
profecía.
about 1.5, only slightly higher than a typical
va a
seasonal
tener
flu.
esa profecía
One
de
person gonna
Apocalipsis 3.
infect 1.5 people.
Cuando dice que
new victims a disease carrier is likely to infect is about 1.5, only slightly higher than a typical seasonal flu. The virulence of the virus, as measured by the case-fatality ratio, is comparable to that of the Asian flu and Hong Kong flu pandemics, or category.
Él no podía decir, mira, el hombre blanco va, los sodomitas van a entrar en esclavitud. Mira, él tenía que hablar con simbolismo.
Can't understand that they can't do it with a real virus that spread that fast.
Juan tenía que hablar con simbolismo.
After that, there'll be no control. The world
en el libro de Apocalipsis.
You understand? The people who telling you about it, they're so-called dropping like flies.
Permitido que él mande esa
they tell you that somebody in Donald Trump can't just have it. They tell you a member of Congress just have it.
El libro de
They're the one
Apocalipsis
who's gonna have it then.
Nunca hubiera,
lo
hubieran permitido en la Biblia. Si te dice las cosas directas.
On the CDC's Pandemic Severity Index scale of 1 to 5. At this level, workplaces are advised to consider modifying schedules and rely more heavily on telework and staggered shifts. At the end of 22 months, the World Health Organization declares the end of the pandemic.
Wow, 22 months, people. Wow, 22 months. Wow, so you look at that and tell me, people, how many people can survive this shit with them locking you off in your home? You can't go out to work, everything stopped. They're gonna crash the economy. They want you to depend on the government. They're delivering food in brown paper bags. Yes, that's what they're gonna do, people. Deliver you some meals in bags. Wow, that's what they're gonna do. They keep you at home. How many people gonna last with the food that they stock up all the way to the roof? Of course, it's gonna done at some point. They're gonna deliver food to your house. That's what they're gonna do. Feed you that GMO food because they got a lot of it. Just remember that I tell you, they use it to cripple the country, the whole wide world, cripple the world, and now you're depending on the government. I told you, they don't need money. The money is to keep you in slavery. They don't need it. They can stop every damn thing. They don't have to go to work. They don't have to do shit. The money is there. People is going nowhere. And the money that you have in crisis, you already spend it all up. Wake your ass up. They already have your money there.
It has killed more than 21 million people and infected more than 1.6 billion people worldwide, or nearly 23% of the world's population. Life.
Nothing else.
Si hubiera seguido por el camino de Yahweh, será mi pueblo. Y no volveré a expulsar a mi
Insurance
pueblo.
losses exceed $45 billion. As severe as it sounds, this pandemic does not represent a worst-case scenario in terms of pandemic risk. To help companies prepare for the full range of possible outcomes, the AIR model offers a 500,000-year catalog of simulated events.
Ok, esa gente no son israelitas. Ellos se robaron esa tierra después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial.
I had a little bird. His name was Elsa. I opened the window and in flew
Ellos se robaron
Elsa.
esa tierra después de la Segunda Guerra
Recently,
Mundial.
Spanish flu has been what some people call a forgotten pandemic.
En el año
But it was a
70,
huge
photo again. It's the same photo.
cuando el Imperio Romano expulsó a Israel, Israel tuvo que esconderse en África, y en Europa y en Asia.
That's what they used to bring you the news back in the day. That's what they're doing. It's the same thing they're doing
Los
today.
israelitas están en todas partes del mundo.
global calamity. In terms of the number of deaths,
Los descendientes de los israelitas
we're saying
están
50
en
to
todas partes
100
del
million,
mundo.
far greater than the we're saying.
Is the sun shining on this one right here lit up? I told you, man, CGI, they pass off as real. Look at these people that you see sitting there. You believe it's real? It's nothing but a hope. But that's how they fool it on masses. Add some little Photoshop in and patch it up. There you go. That's why you get this shit so bright right there, like an alien.
Por eso que los israelitas dominicanos
50 to 100 million,
en República Dominicana
far greater than the casualties of the First World War.
no están trabajando.
Roughly around April, May 1918, when, the carnage of the First World War is graphic and horrendous.
Muchos de los
But
que
at the same
trabajan
time,
están ganando sueldos cebolla.
Videos of it. People getting shot and people getting bombed and everything.
Que es un sueldo que cuando tú lo ves te hace llorar.
Believe it, it's nothing but a TV show. And And I tell you, man, I'm sorry for those people back then. Picture them trying to solve this right here.
Nosotros estamos ganando disparate. Aquí viene Esaú con barricade para llevarse todo el oro de los israelitas.
They have no resource back then. There you go. They couldn't notice that there's no way they could have been out there filming the damn war like TV.
But at the same time, this unknown enemy is starting to sweep through the US, Europe, the trenches, and it is recorded by the Spanish press. And it becomes dubbed as the Spanish flu because they are neutral. Well, at the time in the 1920s,
a Leonel para que haga su tratado de barricade para que ellos se lleven todo el oro, porque ahora mismo el mundo todavía le pertenece a Satanás.
They estimated that maybe 20 million had died. By the late 20th century, that figure had been up to 25 million. In the 21st century, with scientists and historians now getting together to work much more closely, that figure has now been upped to 50 to 100 million people killed.
El israelita no va a prosperar en este país.
50 to 100 million.
Nosotros no vamos a prosperar
50 to
hasta que llegue Yahweh Señor y nos entregue el mundo, el reino.
Give and take 500 million. Get out of here. That don't sound right.
This virus killed more people in the first 25 weeks than HIV/AIDS has killed in 25 years.
There you go again, people. With another fake epidemic that they put on again for the masses.
Horrendous. I mean, those mortality statistics are staggering.
We don't know exactly why some flu strains are much more severe than others and why some of them would be more likely to kill people or cause very severe disease.
What is particular about avian and pandemic viruses is that they replicate deep inside our lungs. When our cells detect this and trigger very strong innate immune response, this leads to an influx of white blood cells and fluids into our lungs that restricts the amount of airspace that we have to breathe.
The symptoms are very graphic.
Él tiene un balance perfecto.
Don't believe in it.
El hombre negro, el israelita.
Wow, take a look at this.
It's very, very striking. So it said that some people drowned in their own phlegm. So if it was hitting or affecting the lungs, people were spurting blood from their ears and their noses.
People were picking up blood even through their ears and noses. And I told you, people, I heard one case of somebody so-called of the coronavirus coughing up blood. They never tell you that. You understand? That's bullshit for the masses. If you coughing up blood, you better make sure you seek for something else. Don't worry about no coronavirus because it's a fake hoax they got for the masses. Everybody gonna be sick. You got the coronavirus. You're feeling pain from the so-called flu. Of course you don't think that you have the coronavirus. If you have the regular flu that comes every year and hit almost everybody, you're gonna think that you have the coronavirus. You need to stop it, people. Don't even think about the fucking coronavirus. I told you it's 100% out. I don't give a damn. They don't have one of those so-called flu-like symptoms, disease or virus that gonna flip you over and kill you. You got it? It's nothing different from the damn seasonal flu. Don't let them fool you. You get what I mean? Stop letting them tell you about the coronavirus and kill you. And as soon as you feel like you have a stuffy nose, there you go, you have the virus. People just don't.
Descriptions of people turning blue, purple.
Bullshit.
So,
of course they become purple. It's bullcrap.
You know, it was really, really simple.
Go again, people, the same footage again. What I don't tell you, did I miss? I told you already, people. I study hoaxes. That's what I do. All of them have the same footage, the same photos to convince the masses that it's real. Why you can't get it, people? That's what they do. They've been doing it from the 90s. From 19, you know what? They've been doing it from ever since. This is nothing new. We already figured it out. They can't do nothing else to slide by the truth.
Yeah, and people just dropping down in the streets.
Same footage.
Those that succumbed to the flu were in the age group 20 to 40 years, which is very unusual for an influenza epidemic or pandemic. And scientists and historians are now still looking to see why.
There's really two ways that people die.
Look at this that they show the masses. You're supposed to believe this right here. What's wrong, people? You believe in this shit right here. You believe that all of these people in these sheets
Y no hay ningún libre albedrío que los librará de eso.
Cough, get the fuck out of here. It's garbage. 100% set up from the elite.
In 1918, they either died from the initial flu infection, or they died from an enormously strong immune response to that virus, where their lungs just filled up with fluids from trying to attack the virus that got into their lungs.
So traditionally, everyone sort of said, oh, well,
War, and I guess they have the virus at the same time. This one with the cross on. Wow, I told you people, they're full of shit on the map.
it's the trenches, you know, the conditions of the war, and that's why it was so fatal. But when
Look at this right here from back in the days, people. Every single one of them got on the mask. I told you, this is all they
El libre albedrío no
masses.
existe.
Hawks with the damn army.
you think, well,
La única
you know,
gente
how did it
que
spread
destinado
so rapidly
a
around the
cambiar su
world?
That's the
comportamiento.
good question. Is the same thing we asking about this coronavirus. How the hell do it fly so
Son los
fast
escogidos
around the world? That don't
que
make
son
no
el
sense.
tercio de
Why
Israel.
every single country got a case? It
Ellos
don't
son
make
los
no
únicos que están
sense,
destinados a
because this is
cambiar.
garbage.
To places that
Hay
are
un
not
grupo
part
de
of the
Israel que
total
está
war.
destinado a
I think the
ser
traditional
malo
explanation is it starts
hasta que
in
sean
Kansas.
destruidos.
Again, the same photo with the light up right there. The same photo again.
Hay un tercio de hay dos tercios de
See what I tell
Israel
you? What I don't tell you, people, I never miss.
que están
You no matter
destinados
where
a
you get the
seguir
footage from. They got the same damn pictures.
In an army camp, and then the
a
troops
seguir
bring it over
acostándose con
to
mujeres casadas.
the trenches of Europe. But there's still
Hay dos tercios de Israel
Right
que están
here.
destinados a
And if
seguir
you see this, if you walk into
faltándole
a room
respeto a
and
su
it looks
padre.
like this, you might as well just turn around if you awake. If you awake, you turn around and leave. This is
Hay dos
dummies
tercios
right
de la
here.
mujer de
You'll be
Israel
totally separated. You'll be so
que-
separated, they're
que
gonna
están
see you.
destinadas
You get what I'm
So
saying?
many
a
unknowns.
faltarle respeto a su esposo, a,
So
hablar,
mathematical
a no
modelers
someterse
have long been
al
interested in the
esposo,
1918
a no
pandemic.
quedarse con la
And one of
boca
the questions
callada.
is to try and disentangle how
Como
it's
debería
spread
que
around
hace
the
la
world,
boca las
exactly what
mujeres.
the routes have been. Given perfect data, you could work backwards and try to infer where it's come from. Whereabouts does it arrive in a country? Does it arrive multiple times? Or thinking about multiple.
Hay dos tercios de
All
chamaquitos
of these footage that they're giving you
que van a
from
ser,
back then
que
in
se
that
van a quemar en el
so-called
fuego.
pandemic, they will never show you
Como los
the
chamaquitos que se
repercussions.
burlaron,
They will never
se
show
burlaron
you
de
the
Eliseo.
aftermath.
Y
They will
después
never do
Eliseo
it.
le puso esa
They're never gonna
maldición.
show you the aftermath. They're just
Y
gonna tell
salieron
you when it
dos
ends.
osos y lo
22
destrozaron.
months it ends, but they never tell you what the people have to go through. What did they pull
Jehová
off
señaló esa,
after this
no
so-called
coge esa
pandemic?
ni con
What was
chamaquito.
the end result? Wow, a million laws put in place.
Él no le importa
Just
qué edad
like
tú
the
tienes,
9/11
él te
bullshit.
mata.
That's how they do it, people. Wake up.
Countries, where is the first place? If you understand the origin of a pandemic, then you
Hay dos
understand
tercios,
where it's
hay
come
dos
from.
tercios de
and maybe
Israel que van a seguir siendo
Was they
ladronazos.
fighting for treatment? Was a fucking a riot break out
Tigre
because
que tú ni
people
puedes
need to
dejar
get
que entren en tu
vaccine
casa, que tú
and
ni puedes
so-called
tener ni 100
treatment?
pesos en la
Of course it's
mesa,
gonna happen.
porque ese
As
mamagüevo
soon
se lo
as
va a
they tell
robar.
the masses that there's a cure or a so-called treatment, the people gonna go wild. Of course, the people that
Y
don't have
excuse mi
shit,
francés.
they need to wake up.
Stop that in future.
Almost certainly it was a bird flu
Excuse mi
virus.
lenguaje.
Not real.
Pues
All
yo
of
tengo
these
que
photos
decir
that they
así
show
porque,
you, some
porque
of
hay
them in
hombres
balls
que son
rolling
unos malditos
around
azarosos,
with spurs on them.
que están
or some
destinados a la
might look
destrucción.
flat right here. It's bullcrap for the masses. There's no real virus they're showing you. Just like there's no real virus
Hay dos
going
tercios de
around killing
Israel
the people.
Originally. But then,
que
we
que
also
van a
know
seguir
that that
llamando
flu, or
a
something
Jehová,
very
Señor,
similar to it, was
Jehová.
in pigs at the same time. Maybe it's
Dos
somebody...
tercios que van a la iglesia cada
because the
domingo,
swine is the same pig. You understand? That's how they do it.
que
people.
creen que
We
están
keep
salvos, que
catching
siempre
these
te
so-called
están preguntando a uno, ya tú
flu-like
estás salvo,
symptoms
varón,
like
ya
deadly
tú estás salvo, varón.
disease or deadly virus from animals. Bats
Varón,
and
ya tú
fucking
aceptaste a
pigs
Cristo.
and birds. It's bullcrap. people.
who works very closely with birds, or
Aquí
who
dice
works very closely
Mateo
with pigs, or
24,
has...
versículo
Birds
13.
and pigs.
Pero el que
No, it's a
persevere
bat.
hasta el fin, ese
Wow,
se
this is
salvará.
bullshit for the masses.
Mother exposure
Tú
like
puedes estar
that.
diciendo que ya tú te
One of the
salvaste.
big, really open questions in flu research and flu public health is, how does the virus adapt from one
Estos
species
cristianos que
to
siempre
another?
están
How
que, varón,
does,
ya
for
tú estás
example, a
salvo.
virus in
Con un
pigs or
maldito
in
fucking
birds
orgullo.
get into humans and then start
Ya un
transmitting?
pasillo outside, te va a
Then the
quitar
key
ese orgullo y
question
te va a
is,
destruir.
how does the virus then adapt within that person to stop being a pig virus or a bird virus and become a human virus? In other words,
Estos cristianos que andan con
You know
orgullo,
why he just say that? It's
que
to
tienen
mock
que
the
tener esta
damn
mirada,
people.
Ya un
Because I already told you. Remember, I'm not no doctor, but I
Porque tú
never
lo
miss.
estás adorando
You
a
can
él
never
en la
pass off a
verdad,
fucking
en el
animal.
espíritu.
An animal can never pass off no disease and
Porque está
no
buscando
virus
gente que lo
on the
adoren en
human
verdad y
being.
en
You hear me
espíritu.
tell you that? It's bullshit for the masses. It's 100% hoax they got for the people. You believe in it? Get the fuck out of it.
To be able to transmit from human to human. And it's probably some very quick.
Different fucking creatures, the human being and any animal that you can pick out. They don't have the same kind of disease and viruses. It's bullshit. None of them can pass on no disease to you. It's bad. 100%.
Evolutionary process that is going on within that human, and in many cases won't be successful. But in a few cases will, and that's when the virus starts spreading between humans and become a flu pandemic.
This bullshit, people. There you go. Yes, after the animal passes off the you, then it becomes a flu pandemic. It's garbage. Don't believe in everything they tell you on TV. Because one thing you need to remember, they're full of shit. That's it. Once you know that all of them full of shit, then that's no truth for you. Why would you tell truth on them? It's time to turn off the noise when it comes to truth. They are deceptive.
Staying humans is regular seasonal flu.
Regular seasonal flu.
Just people were celebrating Armistice Day.
Y el hijo se llama Yahushua.
This right here, people. Look how they have the dumb people. They have you wrapped around the finger once they pull off a pandemic because you can't move a muscle until they tell you to move. That's what it is, people. And I told you, it don't matter where you at, it's gonna get tighter and tighter by the day go along. That's how it is. They're gonna do it. They're gonna lock you down because it's increasing and they need to lock down before it can stop. That's what they're gonna tell it down.
But then it resurged, and a far more deadly and virulent strain emerged. So this second wave really spread like wildfire, affecting a third or quarter of the population of the world. And it was short-lived, so it petered out not long afterwards, maybe 1920, 1921. But it was in a sense short-lived.
What happened is that
this gonna be the same, or this one gonna hang on for a few months.
Él no se llama
This
Jesucristo.
gonna hang on. Remember, 20-something months.
Cuando llegue toda la destrucción a la tierra, los terremotos,
They tell you that was
los huracanes peores que Laura e
and I'm telling you,
Isaías.
I'm not out to scare the people, but I only give you reality. It's reality that's something that
Cuando
you
llegue
need to
unos
look
super
into.
huracanes.
I'm not trying to scare you, but think about it. If they have you trapped off in your home for some months, think about it. They have you trapped off.
Cuando llegue el terremoto peor
they lock you off
que el
because they
terremoto
claim that they're
de
trying to
Haití
save
de
you.
2010.
How you gonna be maintaining? You're not going to work. You're gonna sit there and
Ustedes
wait
van a
on
estar
Donald
llamando,
Trump to send
ay
you a
Dios,
check
ay Dios, vas,
and send
él no te
food
va a
to
hacer
your
caso,
door.
te jodiste.
I told you, people, that's where they're heading with this shit right here. I told
Ya
you,
un pase mi José no te va a hacer caso.
it's a reset. They have to do it.
Porque no
And
hay
if you
otro
go back
nombre.
and check from
Él no va a
any
responder
biblical
a
days,
ese maldito nombre
everything
falso.
happened in 2,000 years. 2,000 years. You understand? Before and after Christ, they give you so-called 2,000 years. Just remember, I tell you, people, the 2,000 is a reset. 2020. You think they just start counting numbers 2,020 years ago? You better wake up, people. They set it up all the way for this right here to set the new world order in place right now.
virus continued to transmit among humans. In fact, it continued until 1957 to transmit between humans. And probably what happened there is that the virus adapted to humans. It wasn't.
It just adapts to humans. That's how the disease go away. You believe that? Wow, something that's killing the human being kills so much millions of people. Are you kidding me? From 50 to 100 million people? And it just adapted to them all of a sudden. That's sad.
This avian or swine virus that came in and was accidentally
all lies.
or pathogenic in humans. In our lab here in Cambridge, we study both seasonal flu and pandemic flu from the standpoint of how does the virus evolve and how can we predict that evolution and make vaccines to try to
Make vaccines
para que los verdaderos reyes de la tierra, los santos, puedan descubrir el verdadero nombre del Padre. Porque el verdadero nombre del Padre es un misterio. Y Él no quiere que todo el mundo lo sepa. Y el verdadero nombre del Hijo es un misterio. Por eso que Él descubrió la
and in the
palabra.
computer to understand what it's going to do next and to make vaccines against those strains that will evolve in the future. So this is the basic science of studying evolution and trying to predict that evolution. Something that nobody's ever been.
Scientist people, that's what they're creating right here. So I use for the masses and tell you sure that's what they're doing.
Able to do for a complex organism. And then working to use that understanding to make better vaccines. On the pandemic flu side, we do a similar thing where we look to see how that virus is changing. That virus, how it changes in birds and how it changes in how that virus changes in other species.
Entonces, el Señor, Él ocultó.
Yes, they are also flying around with viruses that can kill the masses. You see that? They put that shit on the masses. Just watch this one right
It's hard to believe that something so tiny
Para que los
could destroy
idiotas
so
que no están
many.
destinados a descubrir el verdadero nombre del Padre se jodan.
It's hard to believe that something so tiny could destroy so many.
In just 2 years, this terrible plague was to claim over 20 million lives.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst epidemics in history.
As for adults, those born before 1957 probably got the measles because there was no vaccine.
It's another bullshit that they pass off on the masses. And when I was a kid, basically, the measles is just something that pass you by, people. It's gonna kill you, no. They're not gonna kill you. Only the government pass off that fucking lie on the masses and tell you people
Isaías
dropping
6,
from measles.
versículo
It's
10.
a bullshit. You get a little rash. And
Engorda
a
el
lot of people
corazón de
got
ese
a whole lot of
pueblo
remedy for
de
it. They
Israel.
bathe in
No está
potion
hablando
herbs.
de los
And they get
dominicanos,
rid of that
cubanos,
shit like a snap on the damn finger.
Los
Or they
indios
can fool the
indígenas,
masses with the press
los
and
descendientes de
tell you
los
that you're
esclavos que
dying
vinieron de
from measles.
África,
It's bullshit.
los descendientes de los
Nobody died
taínos,
from that shit in real life. Just remember I tell you, you're fucking fake
los descendientes
smallpox. You believe them? Come
patrilineal,
on.
Back then.
For this
descendencia
list, we're looking at
patrilineal.
plagues, pandemics,
Porque la
and other
descendencia
scourges of
de un
disease
israelita
that
se
spread
decide
through
por
the
el
human
padre.
population like wildfire, killing
Y no
millions.
se decide por la madre como dice Satanás con los judíos falsos.
It's nothing but hoax, people. They're not telling the truth when it comes to pandemic. They make it up.
The disease permanently scarred both his
Engorda el
body
corazón de ese
and his
pueblo.
mind.
We're not necessarily ranking them based on how many people were killed by the plagues, but those figures definitely play into our choices.
No sea que vea
Wow, it was
con sus
lies.
ojos
Let's watch this
y oiga
one.
There
con
were
sus
areas where
oídos
outbreaks had
y
occurred
entienda
where
con su corazón
the
y
rat flu
se
was not there to
convierte y se
transmit,
descubre.
but nevertheless they had a bubonic plague outbreak.
Number 10,
Porque
the
el padre
third
no quiere que todo
cholera
el mundo
pandemic.
entienda
By
esto.
morning, my father was very sick. He had diarrhea that looked
Ya
like rain
pasa,
water
ya
and
usai.
poured out of
Él
him.
no
The
quiere a
unlucky
todo el
victims
mundo.
of this disease suffered through hellish
Bueno,
final
él
days
quiere a los
with
israelitas.
diarrhea, vomiting, and
Pero él no
results.
quiere que se
Don't worry
salve
about it,
todo el
people. You
mundo.
see when you're in these kind of countries right here, carrying around these damn dirty buckets to go get the dirty water that they so-called
Todos
have
estos
for you.
israelitas,
Of course. Yeah, of
todos,
course. He
mira,
was
la
sick.
mayoría
What you think?
de los israelitas,
Come
los
on.
dos tercios,
Dehydration
ellos
being
van
the
a
main
estar.
This is the emergency area where the patient first come. If the patient has severe dehydration is a medical emergency.
They're the same people do it. The same people coming with
Van a
all the
entrar al reino
medication
a
to
través de la
help you.
reencarnación.
They're the motherfuckers who poison you to begin with. Now they're coming like they're rescuing somebody. They
Que la
can't
mayoría de
fool
ustedes
With the
van a
most
tener que
deaths of
morir.
any 19th century epidemic, the third cholera pandemic
Y después
began
cuando
in India
reencarnen,
and spread across Asia,
van a
Europe,
volver al
North
reino.
America, and Africa to countries like Russia, where over 1 million people died.
over 1
La
million
reencarnación,
people die, and you know they run
la verdadera
hoaxes
doctrina de
in
reencarnación
Russia,
que la
just
Iglesia
like
Católica
America.
ocultó.
That's what they do.
Counter days, you might have
Es
10 people
una
infected,
piedra de
then 100
tropiezo.
people, then 500 people. One person in 5 will...
Same fucking shit with
Es
this
una gran piedra de
coronavirus.
tropiezo.
The human being can't grasp it. They're never
Porque
gonna
dice en
get it.
Apocalipsis,
There's no way you can spread a virus that
él le dijo a Juan en
fast. No way in this
Apocalipsis
world. It's only because it's a hoax.
que tú
That's why
te
it's
vas a parar
diarrhea.
ante reyes
Without
y tú vas a profetizar
half of
en los
the people
últimos
might die.
tiempos. Pero
However,
ya Juan
it took an
era un hombre
outbreak of this
viejo.
severity for the cause of cholera to be found. In 1854, British doctor John Snow discovered that tainted water was to blame.
There you go. Water
Ya,
don't
ya
tell
Juan
you
era un
people
hombre
tainted
viejo
water.
y él nunca llegó
You think you need a scientist
cuando
to tell you
a él lo
that shit?
mandaron a la isla de
Of
Patmos
course
en
not.
Grecia.
They're the one who poisoned the damn water to begin
Juan
with.
nunca
And
volvió
then they come
a
in like they're
profetizar
rescuing. Oh, we
delante de
find the
reyes.
problem because you always have to have a hero in every fake shit. Who is gonna
Así
be
que
the
Yahweh
hero
Shai le estaba
in
hablando a
this fake
Juan
pandemic that they
de
give
una-
you?
de su
Is it gonna be the
reencarnación.
cartoonist Donald Trump? Who is gonna be?
Y él dijo,
You need to wake your ass up.
And it was this breakthrough that eventually allowed officials to get control of the cholera pandemic.
aquellos que le metieron que le lanzaron en la costilla,
We filtered it through cloth
volverán
and
a
boiled it for
verlo.
1 minute.
Number 9.
Eso
The
significa
Asian
que
flu
estos
pandemic of
soldados romanos
1957.
que le lanzaron la costilla al
Military
Señor
wisdom and the World Health
van a reencarnar para verlo.
Though it can be confirmed that this outbreak of the influenza A virus started in China, the exact origins of the virus are
referencia de reencarnación
And I told you,
que la
China is
Iglesia
a big
Católica,
part of the world stage. I said that
que viene
many
siendo
times.
el falso
Just listen
profeta.
in. They are a part of it. That's why you see half of the world
La Iglesia Católica ocultó
involved with China. When
y
it
todas
comes to
estas
businesses.
denominaciones
They
cristianas
build everything, they make every damn thing, people. They
se
are part of the
adoptaron
psyops.
esa
That's why
doctrina
we
falsa
break out so-called start from there.
y adoptaron
Because they're running the
la doctrina
psyops and the
falsa
contested, with one popular theory suggesting that a
infierno
mutation
de
in
fuego
wild
literal
ducks joined together with
que
a
es una
truthful
maldita
human strain
mentira.
to create disease.
This duck, the mutilating ducks, that's why they got the disease, the bird flu. I told you they're hoaxing
One of
this.
3 flu pandemics during the 20th century, this one was the least deadly, with estimated global death figures ranging between 1 and 4 million. And that's likely due to the fact that a vaccine was created in 1957 that helped.
El infierno de fuego literal es una
Always
mentira.
gonna come and rescue you. It's bullshit for the masses.
La Iglesia
Don't believe
Católica
it.
inventó
And
esa
we go
doctrina
get into this video right here
para
and show
controlar
you
a toda la
to the
gente.
so-called Bill Gates. We go get into
Es
that
un
and see
método
what
de
he's talking
control
about.
para
We go
controlar
get
la
into it
humanidad.
because a lot of people talking about, yeah, man, break down that Bill Gates video. I did do one of them already. I did break down one of them that he was talking about that same so-called pandemic.
La Iglesia Católica
So-called flu-like
usó la
symptoms that
religión,
come through like some kind of profit.
la doctrina falsa para controlar la gente.
Why don't you
Cuando tú
describe
mueres,
as vividly as you can
cuando tú mueres,
what it
tú
is
vuelves
you're
y tú
worried about, what it
reencarnas
is.
What you
a
gotta
través de tu
understand,
nieto
because I'm a different kind of guy. I
o de
look
tu
at these guys
bisnieto.
and I'm like, okay, so say for instance this Bill Gates right here, he's one of them computer kind geek, and he can come up with the so-called Microsoft. Why the fuck you wanna hear something about virus from him? I mean, who would think that he got that type of brain? I mean, because he so-called come up with a computer software, all of a sudden he's a professional in fucking vaccine and diseases. Wow, that's so show you that you live in a dumb world.
The nightmare scenario looks like.
Unfortunately, there's very few things, and most of them are very low probability. Some big volcanic explosion.
Big volcanic explosion.
Éxodo 20,
And the first thing a truth teller need to
versículo
tell you
5.
that all of this is a hoax. The nuclear weapon is a hoax. They don't have it.
No te
They don't have
postrarás
no
ante
nuclear
ellos ni
weapon,
les
no nuclear
darás
bomb.
culto,
They're full of shit on the
porque
masses.
yo,
They can't
Yahweh,
blow up half the
tu
world
Dios,
with one bomb. Just remember
soy
that all of
un
this
Dios
shit is a
celoso,
fake hoax they got for the masses. They
castigo
can
la
show you
iniquidad de los
camera
padres
blowing up the whole wide world,
en los
and the
hijos,
camera stayed here to take the
hasta la
footage.
tercera
Don't believe no
y
bullshit.
cuarta
Gigantic
generación de los
earthquake,
que me
asteroid.
odian.
An earthquake and asteroid. I already told you what caused earthquake is. Them just set off an explosion on the ground.
Pero tengo
and it shook up the
misericordia
earth. That's all it is.
por mis
And don't talk
generaciones,
about no asteroid if you
por los
got
que me
brain.
aman
You
y
just
guardan
gonna
mis
look dumb. It don't
mandamientos.
matter how much glasses you have on.
But at least in the nuclear case, you've got to say we take it quite seriously. We
Cuando tú
budget a lot
mueres,
of
tú
money, have a lot of
vuelves.
people who think
Es
about
decir,
nuclear
El
deterrence.
Señor te
I'm very
castiga
glad that work's been
cuando
done,
tú reencarnes
and
como
I
tu
rate
propio
the
nieto.
chance of a nuclear war in my lifetime.
Not gonna knock the nuclear weapon.
Por eso, mira, por eso
I'm
que en esta
telling you, it's
doctrina,
glad that they're
cuando tú mencionas
investing in
reencarnación,
preventing the nuclear
hay muchos cristianos que
You're not knocking them, but they need to pay more attention to the so-called global
porque ellos le traen a estos malditos fucking idiotas
Being fairly
cristianos.
low. I rate the chance of a widespread
Que no,
epidemic
varón,
far
cuando
worse
tú
than
mueres al
Ebola
infierno.
in my lifetime is well over 50%.
people Why is he talking like that? You never get it. It's this script, people, just like I showed you. Kim Kardashian so-called predicted in a fucking 08 that 2020, the same virus, describe it down to a T. Didn't call it the name, but describe it down to a T. What it gonna do to kill you and everything. What you think, all the people in the state know the fucking script. Everyone.
If we look at the 20th century, we look at the death chart of the 20th century, I think everybody would say, oh yeah, there must be a for World War I. You know, sure enough, there it is, like 25 million. And there must be a big spike for World War II, and there it is, it's like 65 million. But then you'll see this other spike that is as large as World War II, right after World War I. And most people, a lot of people would say, well, what? What was that? There's two kinds of flus. There's flus that spread between humans very effectively.
This is the only way they could have put it out if they use so-called flu. That's the only way they can do it. There's nothing else they can use to get the whole wide world in panic and to shut down the world. The only thing they can use is a flu that's spreading rapidly like you've never seen before.
And there's flus that kill lots of people. And those two properties have only been combined.
Everybody post up for the camera. You can see this one staring dead at the camera holding the empty bed. This one doing the same. Why they staring at the camera holding the bed? Wow, uniform style, people. Are you kidding me? It's just for the photo. Same photo again.
Widespread flu. Once in history. Well, that is Spanish flu.
By 11, 65 million.
We have no idea where it came from. It's called the Spanish flu because the Spanish press was the freest thing. We have no idea where it came from.
We have no idea where it came from. And I told you, all of them sing the same song. They say the same thing. They don't know where it comes from. They call it Spanish flu because Spanish is the first people to basically want to elaborate on it and admit it that they have it.
It's called the Spanish flu because the Spanish press.
You see what he did? That's the Freemason hand sign right there with the glass. He can't fool everybody. He's just faking the mask.
Was the freest. They were the first to talk openly about it. And so the annals of epidemic history, that's the big event. I funded a disease modeling group that uses computer simulation, and that work is
always so-called funded these places and created vaccines and medications. You understand? How did he get in that field? By creating Microsoft. What that got to do with science and medications, vaccines and all? No, because he's a devil puppet. That means he volunteer. He can trick the masses. You understand me, people? We have to do it. He's one of them that brainwash the people. So therefore, even though it's not in his field, he has to play his part. Everybody got to do it. That he has the devil's part.
Phenomenal in helping us target our polio eradication resources. Which parts of Nigeria should we work harder on?
Yes, what part of Nigeria should you work more harder on? They lie to the people. You think they're coming there to help you and help you cure diseases? You're in a world of hurt. They're the one who bring the disease there to begin with.
And it's very natural if you have a group like that to say, hey, look at something like a Spanish flu in the modern day. Health systems are far better. And so you think, hey, that wouldn't be very bad. Well, we tried it. And there are some assumptions we had to make. But what we showed is that the force of infection because of modern transport, which compared to 1918 is over 50 times as great. And so if you get something like the flu, and you look at that map of how within days, it's basically,
wow, you see that, people, this is how they do it, and it's the same thing they're doing today. As far as putting the days up and tell you how much people gonna have the coronavirus. Remember what the California governor said? He said in 8 weeks after California gonna have it, half of California gonna contract the coronavirus disease in 8 weeks. He know that 100%. How the fuck did he know that? It's the script. Again, it's the script. Just like the Kim Kardashian and all of these sodomites, Bill Gates, and them know it's a script.
All urban centers of the entire globe, that is very eye-opening. That didn't happen with Spanish flu in the past.
Even though it didn't happen in the Spanish flu, you know that it's gonna happen with this one right here coming up.
the opportunity to do more than just let it run its course.
That's all you go be
Let it
doing.
run.
It's just a Freemason puppet they put on. And there's no way he's a man. You wake up, bam.
Of course, he is really only in the last decade. Basically, when you talk about drugs, you talk about small molecules, you're talking about these complex biological protein like this, which is a subclass called antibodies. Antibodies are the molecules that the immune system naturally builds to attack disease. Today, the idea that somebody says, oh, here's an antibody, make a lot of it, make it very quickly, that's right on the cutting edge. And the Ebola epidemic showed
I told you, man, the dumb people never get it. You think somebody was posting up right there with a camera when this person finds somebody on the ground dead.
Y muchos de esos vehículos serán ocultos en nubes. Estarán ocultos en nubes.
But the dumb masses, you better wake your ass up.
that we're not ready for a serious epidemic. An epidemic that would be more infectious, would spread
You can burn somebody with an infection and sit around there and breathe the
Pero se va a revelar que son
faster
ovnis,
than
que son los
Ebola
carros de
did.
Yahoo
This is the greatest risk of a huge tragedy. This is the most likely thing by far to kill over 10 million excess people in
Of course, you know that it's gonna kill over 10 million people. Wow, we're gonna see where they're gonna go with this fake virus that they got for the masses. Is it the one that Bill Gates talking about gonna kill over 10 million people worldwide? Wow.
year. We don't need to invest nearly what we do in military preparedness. This is something where...
And of course, I already told you to pay attention to my video. All of these is bullshit. They're not fighting. So therefore, all of these shit, all the rocket launch, they tell you North Korea launching rocket, they just bullshit for the masses. You understand? They're not fight. All of them get paid from the same world government. That's why all of them have to play a part in this fake
less than
pandemic.
$1 billion a year on R&D, medical surveillance, standby personnel, cost training the military so they can play a role in terms of all the logistics here. This can be done. And we may not get many more warnings like this one to say, okay, it's a pretty modest investment to avoid something that really, in terms of
You know exactly what's gonna happen, and you know that you know the script.
to avoid something that really,
Show the signs every time, people. That to show you that he know what the fuck is going on. He know the script like the damn puppets on the worst page.
to avoid something that really, in terms of the human condition, would be a gigantic setback.
A gigantic step back. And I told you already, people, nobody can fool me. This virus is a hoax. And that's why they use it on the masses, because the people, they do believe in everything the government brings. We go get into the so-called social distancing. Let's watch this one now. See what they're talking about.
The time for social distancing ends immediately.
What exactly is social distancing?
They're gonna tell you what is social distancing. How can you so-called get quarantined? That's what they're telling you to do. Quarantine yourself for 14 days and don't worry about it. I already told you they're gonna update you. While you locked down for 2 weeks, they're gonna update you. There's no way they're gonna lock you down for only 2 weeks.
Social distancing, institute for social distancing.
My name is Carolyn Canusio, and I'm a social educator.
100% faker with your CC or your 33 right there in the name.
Biologists, every action that we take and every way in which we can hold back from the public sphere in order to limit the opportunities for transmission is an opportunity to save a life.
I'm wondering if there are just one or two concrete pieces of advice you would want people to follow.
I think our lives should look radically different right now than they normally do. I would say limit your face-to-face interactions. Work from
This is what they're telling you now on TV. The same motherfuckers sitting around the table bringing you the fake news. But if you notice one thing, they're basically sitting far away from each other because they're telling you that's how you should live. You can't live your life like that. It's bullshit. So you come into office. Which one of y'all have the fucking virus? Okay, so none of y'all show up who got it, so you stay away from each other. They're fooling the masses. This is how they want the people to live. Divide, and I told you that's how you fall. Bam.
work remotely whenever possible.
intentan de detener. Mira, usted, esa uno va a poder detener mierda.
outside the home. Stand
Tú no vas a
6
poder
feet or
detener
more
ni un
away
misil.
from any person you're encountering in a public space. And
And of course, they make that up right there on the money. Stay 6 feet away from other people.
La
I told you,
defensa
it's a
antimisiles
perfect way to divide up the
que
people.
tiene
You can't
Babilonia,
even
los
share
Estados Unidos.
information face to face. What's wrong?
para defenderse
Yes, use
contra
the
los misiles
social media
nucleares.
where they see
No le va a
every
servir
fucking thing that you
cuando
do.
llegue esa
severely
decisión.
restrict your travel from city to city, limiting that to truly urgent matters, and limit your
Por eso dice
Limit your
maldita.
flying, period. You got to be grounded
Maldita la ciudad
by
que
the
lo
government.
recibió.
That's what they're doing. It's not a coincidence.
engagement.
Pues
in
como se
the
alegró de tu
public
caída
sphere. Don't attend
y se
group
regodeó
gatherings, don't go
en
to the
tu
theater,
ruina.
don't go to sporting events.
No
Así
more group
lamentará su
gatherings,
propia
and they're gonna
destrucción.
drop it from 10 to 2. What I don't say, people, they're gonna drop. Remember, they tell you no large gathering over 10, over 10 people. Now it's 2 people.
Y su
Of course, it's
arrogancia
coming your way. They're gonna
se
do it.
cambiará en
What we're
duelo.
trying to prevent is contact with droplets.
Cuando lleguen los
when people
misiles
sneeze, cough, or
nucleares
spit.
a Babilonia.
I'm wondering what you think of small social gatherings. How big is too big? You will get different
Mira lo que
answers from
dice-
different people about this.
Mira
and
lo
I
que
tend
dice
to
el
be
siguiente
more
versículo.
conservative. One of my sons said to me, "Mom, if we're quarantined, at least we can still have
El
dinner."
Eterno,
The son said with
que
that
aún
text,
parece mi outside,
wow. So you see how they do it,
le
people?
enviará un
They want you
incendio
to isolate from
inextinguible.
people and use the social media to contact you. That's how it
Y
is.
quedará
This is
habitada
how
por
you should
demonios
communicate. Just use
durante mucho
the
tiempo.
social media, text or whatever, so we can still see it. That's how they do it, people.
Marty's
Eso está
right.
hablando de
And
la
I said,
destrucción
"No,
nuclear."
Gabriel, that's the antithesis of what quarantine is about. We have to minimize our contact with others.
Baruch,
I would say
capítulo 4.
that's the general rule. Limited. Limited to
Versículo
what's
35.
necessary. Do you recommend that
Está hablando de los misiles
go outside
nucleares
even if they
que
have
ya
limited
aún
contact
parece mi
with people?
outside.
So what
Le va a
I've been
enviar
doing
a
is
Estados
trying to
Unidos
wake up at a very early
y a las
hour and go
Américas
usually,
y a todos estos
or
fucking
to go
países
in
que
very
esclavizaron a los
unpopulated
israelitas.
places and walk in the woods. I'm wondering.
Go to unpopulated places and walk in the
Porque
woods.
ellos se
There you go,
alegraron,
people.
ellos se alegraron,
Isolate yourself from other
se
human
alegraron
beings.
en
That's the new
nuestra
world order.
ruina.
Wow.
What
Eso
you
los mitan
think
y que,
about
ay, que
taking
los
flights.
tenemos en esclavitud,
An
mira, ellos son
important consideration
estos maritos
is
negros, mira
that
cómo
the
están
movement of
ahora, tienen que, ellos
populations
están ganando
is the fuel
miseria,
for
nosotros estamos
continued
adelante, ellos
spread.
están
So in the
atrás.
1918 flu, there was this massive movement of troops across the
Súbate
United
de piso.
States, and that troop movement was
Malito
the
domita,
perfect
súbate en
vehicle
la
for
tierra.
continuing the spread of
Bullshit,
Tú vas
people.
a ser
Same
ceniza.
photos again they got for the masses. You see what I'm talking about yet? Wow.
ones up. And you may think that it's different if you're just traveling for spring break, but really there isn't any difference between that kind of movement for the purposes of wartime personnel needs and the movement of people because they want to get to the beach. We don't want to have
move, period. They want you to freeze right where you're at.
a prolonged
That's it.
contact with other humans in a confined space. And what's a flight if not prolonged contact with
So
other
why is the metro bus system still running? Why would you still have up those railroads running? How you gonna isolate yourself on a damn bus? That don't make no sense.
in a confined space?
Mira
So,
hacia
don't do it. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. I'm sure that's
y
going to be your
contempla
answer for
la
all of the
alegría
following questions I have.
que te envía
If
ya
you don't
aún
have
parece
to,
mi
don't do
outside.
it. What about public transportation? So many people are dependent upon public transit to get to work. There might be some risk reduction practices people could adopt, such
Eso está hablando
as
que
trying
mira,
to ride at off-peak times. If you are able to walk or ride your bike, do that. It probably is safer from an infection perspective to try.
Infection perspective, it's better for you to ride. I guess you have to have on a mask and a glove because you are still inhaling the
Y el
air.
oriente,
And they tell you
ahí es
that
que está
virus is
Jerusalén.
airborne. It's bullshit.
Y ese versículo dice, mira hacia el oriente, porque la mayoría de los israelitas, que nosotros estamos en esclavitud, o no estamos en cautiverio ahora, no estamos en esclavitud. ¿Cómo esto es una esclavitud?
Need help. If people have been living with an elderly family member, they should reduce radically their contact with the outside world.
You hear that, people?
Es una forma de esclavitud, pero no como la que
estaban nuestros antepasados. Outside world, so you don't bring the virus to that
que
old
teníamos
person.
que recoger
It's
algodón,
bullshit, people. Now they
caña
separate
y
the
todo
whole
eso en
wide
el
world.
campo.
Of course, it's easy for them now to implement a new world order. and the masses. Let's watch this one.
Overseas tonight, the International Olympic Committee now considering delaying the Summer Games in Tokyo. German Chancellor Angela Merkel now in
I already told you they're going to do it, because in order for the pandemic to continue and look as real as possible to the people, you can't have no damn Olympics. As you can see this marker right here, the next sodomite and the masses been around running games on me forever. All right here. Just another man, an old man in a wig.
Quarantine after her doctor tested positive. And in Italy,
everybody gotta play their part. The doctor, our own doctor, so-called, virus is bullshit.
Coronavirus showing no mercy. ABC's Julie McFarland in London.
Tonight, another devastating 24 hours in Italy. At least 650 people dying.
Ya le está quitando la poca libertad que nosotros tenemos en el mundo con esta maldita pandemia falsa.
This after nearly 8.
This is what they're showing you right here.
Yo no voy a negar que
succumb to the virus the day before. Hospital scenes a nightmare. Disturbing images showing doctors overrun.
Pero ellos están exagerando con todos los malditos fucking números.
You believe that they're coming here with a camera to get this footage right here?
Diga que se murieron
doctors overrun. Now 5,400 fatalities.
Para decir que mira ya volvimos de un velorio.
And they give you the 9/11
Since the outbreak, one doctor in the hard-hit region of Lombardy saying they are not eating or going to the bathroom during their shift in order to cope.
¿Dónde están esta gente?
They're not eating or going to the bathroom during the shift because they don't want to fucking with themselves so they could catch a virus. You believe that? Because they tell you not to touch your mouth or your nose.
Serve their masks and gloves.
I'm not concerned for myself.
Don't let them fool you. They're not concerned for themselves, just concerned about you. It's bullshit.
The only problem is that I'm worried that if I get sick, I cannot help anymore.
Pope Francis delivering an extraordinary.
Watch this one right here doing the cross sign. Show you it's a damn devil puppet right here in plain sight. They all are part of it. That's why they shut down the world. The Vatican is digging it.
Orbi et Orbi blessing from an empty St. Peter's Square. In Spain, the death toll climbing, the total to more than 1,700.
I'm also in Spain, 1,700. And I told you, I already break it down on the podcast, show you all the so-called countries in line. All of them have every single country got a case. That means every country gotta be involved in the lockdown.
The national lockdown extending for another month. Germany's Chancellor.
Lockdown extended for another month. But I just tell you, they're gonna do it. When they lock you down, don't be thinking it's just gonna be the time that they tell you. It's just for you to comply. Then they can extend it, as you can see the eagle fading away right here in the background. Watch this right here.
Angela Merkel now going into quarantine after finding out her doctor tested positive. The country now banning
quarantine. I told you they're full of shit.
Outdoor meetings of more than 2, unless it is for. After finding out her doctor tested positive, the country now banning outdoor meetings of more than 2, unless.
They're banning outdoor meetings of more than 2. That means you have to be by yourself. You and another person is 2. That's it. You understand? Wow. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be also coming to where you're at because it's one world government running the whole shit on you right here. So it's coming where you're at. They're gonna break it down. No gathering, period.
It is for essential work. And police in Paris out in force, checking people.
Yes, they're not worried about the virus. All they need is something over the nose and some gloves and they're good. You believe that people wake up. The police show you. That's 33 numerology. Show you that it's Freemasonry. The whole fucking shit. And those are the ones who are gonna keep you in line in this pandemic.
Force, checking people's papers, making sure they need to be out in public.
You hear that, people? The reason why I'm showing you this, a lot of people not gonna get it. The reason why I'm showing you this because it's coming to you. It's that simple. Remember, before this lockdown, you couldn't tell the people that they're gonna be a lockdown. No, that's China. Oh, that's Italy, not America. And then boom, the same thing comes because they're gonna up the number. And I told you, America is in the so-called plus when it comes to the death. You understand? They got new deaths. They got new so-called victims. That means they're gonna raise the level. Yes, they're gonna close down the country right there, just like you see in Italy. And they're checking your papers to see if you have a reason to be in the streets. It's over now. Once they start doing that, you see the martial law in plain sight. And I already told you, when the smoke clears, a lot of non-believers are gonna see the truth.
Force, checking people's papers, making sure they need to be out in public.
Making sure that they need to be in public. They're checking their papers. Wow, people, that's martial law. If you've never seen one, you can't go nowhere. The whole wide world gonna be on the lockdown. It's from the elite. Those are the people who send it down and tell him to lock down the whole wide world. Everybody gotta follow suit. It might not be at the same time now, but they're gonna do it. Just believe.
Tonight, a major headline from the International Olympic Committee. They are considering postponing the Tokyo Summer Games. They say that cancelling is not an option, that they'll announce their decision in 2 to 4 weeks' time.
Yes,
Tom?
it's not gonna be that so-called Olympics, gonna be the so-called sacrifice for the masses to believe that it's nothing sweet. The pandemic is on. That's the only reason why they're doing
Major
it.
developments all over the globe tonight. Hi, everyone.
Let's continue. This one right here. Let's get into it.
This morning, some good news from Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson.
Remember what I tell you about this character right here? What did I tell you? I said he's too old. Remember, they tell you it's the old people that dying from the coronavirus. Once you tell me that this guy have it, I expect him to fall. Just like all those senior citizens that you're telling us dying. Why is he still living with this old back right there, laughing at the masses? You believe they got the coronavirus that they're selling you, killing the masses? No, people. They lie to you. It's just a hope. They have to use these puppets that you know and believe in. And of course, yes, they're good now.
Battling coronavirus in Australia. The star updated his fans, tweeting 2 weeks after our first symptoms, and we feel better.
There you go, people. 2 weeks after the first symptoms, they feel better with these 9 and 6s. That's how they do it. And of course, they are Twitter tweeting. What you think, people? What I tell you about Twitter is a propaganda network, and you know it's propaganda they're running right now. Of course, with the coronavirus. You're gonna see nothing but
Sunday, sheltering in place works like this. You don't give it to anyone.
Shelter in place, it worked, people. They didn't get no fucking treatment, they didn't get no cure. Just isolation from the rest of the people. And there you go. They're well now. You believe it? Let's go back.
After our first symptoms, and we feel better. Thanks from Sunday, sheltering in place works like this. You don't give it to anyone, you don't get it from anyone.
You don't give it to anybody, you don't get it from anyone. What kind of shit is that if you already have it and you're isolating? The only thing you're avoiding is give it to other people. But how the fuck do you get cured? What kind of treatment did you take? This is bullshit.
Wilson captured some of what she called quarantine stir crazy, rapping to Naughty by Nature's 1992 hit Hip Hop Hooray.
Where you think that come from? That's why they never leave it alone. They're never gonna forget the music that was put on by the elites. They're gonna bring it to you, and of course this one perfect opportunity to tell the masses to stay at home and listen music. Come on.
It comes as other stars battling coronavirus are sharing their story.
All of them is fake, 100%. That's why it's not the people around you is having the disease. It's these sodomites that are trying to tell you to stay off the road and stay home.
Bravo's Andy Cohen posted this on Instagram. After a few days of self-quarantine and not feeling great, I have tested positive for
corona. It's self-quarantine because it wasn't feeling great. So it's self-house arrest. And I already told you it's just a fancy word for house arrest. That damn quarantine, yes. So it's telling the masses, don't feel bad, just go in quarantine Make it easy for the government to lock your ass down.
Actor Idris Elba, who tested.
There you go again. So this sodomite involved in lying to the masses.
I have tested positive for coronavirus. Actor Idris Elba, who tested positive for the disease last.
Él le dio ese conocimiento a esa en la mano izquierda. All publicity for these sodomites is good publicity. So now they're telling you, remember, they want you to think that the coronavirus is real. So instead of you worrying about is it real or not, you worry about the drama that it brings. Watch this right here.
He got slammed on social media for not isolating himself away from his wife Sabrina.
He got slammed on social media for not isolating himself from the so-called Sabrina. A man in a drag. Both of them is two fake people on the masses. But what is this about this? Both of them so-called have it. But yes, he basically tell you that the woman don't have it and he don't know because she didn't get tested, but she was hanging out with him, and all of a sudden it's a controversy. I told you, nothing but bullshit to distract the masses from the fake virus.
She too has been diagnosed with the virus.
Diagnosed with the virus, diagnosed with the Adam's apple in the damn neck also. Huh? And this one diagnosed with the damn Benopete. Bam on.
The couple explained their decision in an online interview with Oprah Winfrey.
Online interview with Oprah. Show you that they put us in Oprah and all orange for Freemasonry. Bam on.
It certainly caught it in that time period as well. So, I think, people were right to have highlighted that, spatial distance is important. We weren't thinking about that specifically.
You didn't think about that, but what was you preaching on that fucking video? The same shit, social distancing, and you wasn't thinking about it? That's what you was preaching on the damn video. I already did it and break it down. You was preaching the same social distancing, but you wasn't thinking about it. Wow.
Meanwhile, helping to spread the message through some music, singer Neil Diamond, who does not have
quieren hacer tratados. Hay políticos que quieren hacer tratados con Rusia para reducir la cantidad.
He performed an acoustic version of his famous hit Sweet Caroline with new lyrics.
Tienen algo que se llama Start
What you think, people? Washing hands. Stay at home. Tell you to stay at home and wash your hands. Wow, what kind of dumb people sit around and wait for these sodomites to tell them to wash their hands? That gotta be the dumbest shit in the world, people. Wake up.
Motivating the masses to do the right thing.
Reaching out. All 60 world right there burning with the fire. Don't touch me.
I won't touch you. For today, Joe Fry, NBC.
A los misiles nucleares rápido.
Para irnos de aquí. To convince you that this coronavirus is real and you need to be in panic mode. Run and hide. It's not gonna work. Let's get in the chat a little bit. Yeah, what's good, everybody? Yeah, we on. What I do, catch me out. See you in the building, Greg. What's good? Yeah, Emily, I see you. Yeah, yeah, Bianca. Sweet tea in the building, what's good? Yeah, I see you, Laura. What's happening? Sweet tea. What's good?
Así dice
yeah, loving my life, I see you. Yeah.
Miren que yo despierto contra Babilonia, que viene siendo Estados Unidos. Y los habitantes de Lev Gamay, un viento destructor. Yo estoy hablando de los misiles nucleares.
Wash your hands and sing songs.
Porque cuando un misil nuclear se explota, eso es como un viento. Si ustedes vieron los videos de la explosión en Lebanon, esa explosión fue como un viento.
Fit got it back on. Bless it.
Así que cuando lleguen los misiles nucleares rusos, chinos, que llegue ese viento destructor. Y después los que sobrevivan el impacto, viene el segundo viento destructor, que es la radiación nuclear. Porque la radiación nuclear que te puede, mira, si tú estás lejos del impacto de una explosión nuclear, tú sobreviviste, tú estás bien, tú sobreviviste el impacto. El viento puede joderte. Eso es peor que una microonda. Imagínate morirte del cáncer. Que te den quimioterapia. Y que te caiga el cabello. Si tú estás expuesto, si tú estás expuesto a un viento con radiación nuclear, se te va a caer el cabello en semana. Que la muerte de radiación nuclear es rápida. Eso es como morirte de cáncer rápido. Y eso es lo que va a suceder cuando lleguen los misiles nucleares, como dice en Jeremías 51. Isaías 14, versículo 26. Este es el plan tocante a toda la tierra. Y esta la mano extendida sobre las naciones. Si Yahweh Sabaoth toma una decisión, ¿quién la frustrará? Si él extiende su mano, ¿quién se la hará retirar? Si Yahweh decidió que la mayoría de estos países y ciudades sean destruidos a través del fuego nuclear, de los misiles nucleares rusos y chinos, después de la Tercera Guerra Mundial, ¿quién puede detener eso? El libre albedrío no existe porque nadie puede frustrar la profecía de Yahweh Pasim Yahushai. Así que todo lo que vio Juan y lo que vieron los profetas, todo eso se va a cumplir. Ahora voy a terminar con esto. Salmos 11. Salmos 11. Versículo 6. Lluevan sobre el malvado brasas y azufre, y un viento abrasador como porción de su copa. Call all of y'all how send y'all side by several cups of dust. Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh side. Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh side. Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh side by several cups of dust. Doble honrada a los apóstoles, a los ancianos de Yasurada, de Great Millstone. Shalom a los escogidos. Abba Babawa, Abad Adoram.